This case study is actually a case study which has been performed in the project PREFER of the Innovative Medicines Agency. Oh, yeah. It is a collaboration between different non-profit and profit partners, namely the industrial partners and non-profit partners being academic institutions, patient organizations, and even a health technology agency. And the aim of this huge project is to establish recommendations in the context of the methodologies used to measure patient preferences and also use the results of patient preference studies in order to support the development of guidelines in this context by, for instance, the industry, by the regulatory agencies such as the European Medicines Agency, by HTA bodies and payers. That is one outcome, recommendations on how and when to assess and include patient preferences to inform medical product decision-making. Another outcome of PREFER is to provide training in this context. And that is what this series of webinars is about, to train the stakeholders in this field. We will also produce organizational guidelines that are useful to conduct patient preference studies and are in the process for IMA-UNETA qualification, where we are very happy that for the moment we have a preliminary positive opinion from the European Medicines Agency in terms of qualification of the framework for patient preference studies that we have created within PREFER. Next. PREFER started already in 2016 by first identifying and assessing multiple methods suitable to measure patient preferences. Qualitative methods, so exploratory methods, and also quantitative methods. And these methods have been further used in different case studies, for which the lung cancer case studies is one case study. There are several other case studies conducted in IMI PREFER as well. And based on these case studies, we have also been drafting recommendations which will be final at the end of PREFER, which is to be end of March 2022. Next. But what are patient preferences actually? And for that, I refer to the definition that the FDA has been providing to us and which we have been following during our project. Namely, it is a qualitative or quantitative assessment of the relative desirability or acceptability to patients of different alternatives or choices amongst outcomes or attributes that differ amongst alternative health interventions. This is actually a difficult definition, but what it is about is actually to find out more what patients find important about characteristics related to treatment and diseases, and how important that they find these. An important word in this definition is the term attributes. You can click on it, Karel, attributes. And attributes refers to, next, either benefits related to treatments, next, risks or inconveniences which can be linked to different treatments, and next, potentially also uncertainties that are related to treatments, especially when these treatments are new, innovative, and uncertain. Next, what patient preferences also can provide to us is a lot of other type of information, next, that is relevant for patients and for the whole community. Next, these patient preferences can be studied in patient preference studies. And for that, we have in PREFER developed a full framework for that, incorporating the use of methodologies, qualitative methodologies and quantitative methodologies, namely interviews and focus group discussions next to service-based methods. And the full framework consists of different steps, starting from design phase of a patient preference study, going over to the conduct of a patient preference study, and afterwards, very important to communicate about the results of patient preference studies to those who need to have these results in decision making. And along all that, the organization of a patient preference study. And this has been implemented in one particular patient preference study, namely in the lung cancer case study, which will be presented today. And for that, it is also very important to learn first more about the background of the disease itself, in this case, lung cancer. And I give the word to my colleague, Serena Oliveri.
Thank you very much, Isabel. So I will spend some few words to describe the disease and to introduce the preference-sensitive situation for which lung cancer case study was conducted. So lung cancer is an uncontrolled cell growth into the lung tissues. In particular, the non-small cell lung cancer is the most common form of lung cancer and also the deadliest one. Indeed, only 21.7% of patients diagnosed with lung cancer, with non-small cell lung cancer, survive 5 years after the diagnosis. Based on the level of spreadness of cancer into the lungs, we can distinguish stages, different stages. Early stages 1 and 2 imply that cancer is locally circumscribed in lungs, in one lung. Later stages, instead, 3 and 4, in later stages, cancer has already spread throughout lungs, but not in the rest of the body in case of stage 3, or has begun to spread into different parts of the body, such as other organs, in stage 4, in a condition named metastatic condition. Next, please. Of course, for the lung cancer, many different treatment options exist. The chemotherapy and the targeted radiotherapy are the traditional ones. Instead, a new promising treatment called immunotherapy stimulates the patient's immune system to fight against cancer cells. Different combination of therapies are possible to fight against cancer. But each of these options imply a sort of balancing of benefits and risks. Benefits in terms of increase in life expectancy or improvement of symptoms, but also risks in terms of higher toxicity and higher probability of side effects. Next, please. In particular, in 2019, the EMA approved a combination of immunotherapy and chemotherapy for the first-line treatment of metastatic non-small cell lung cancer. In some patients that present a high expression of this particular protein, named the PD-L1, can also choose between 2 options: immunotherapy alone or immunotherapy plus chemotherapy. The combination of immunotherapy and chemotherapy, of course, is more efficient, has higher efficacy in fighting cancer, but it implies also more toxicity and more side effects. So there is an uncertainty surrounding patients' decision-making, the decision that patients have to, the decision-making process that patients have to make together with their physicians. Uncertainty related to the level of efficacy of the therapies, but also the level of patients' tolerance for a higher toxicity. But in particular, what is unclear is what is exactly relevant to the patients when they have to choose for a therapy. So what matters most to lung cancer patients when they have to choose among different options and different probabilities of benefits and risks? Thank you very much, and I leave the speech to my colleague, Roseanne.